The first words she said to him were, "Is it true you killed your parents?" He didn't answer, and whether or not you believed Sam Benedict did, in fact, murder his parents by burning them alive, had been the rumor of the entire school for years. What was for sure, Sam was, and has always been, a strange kid. The girl, Kim McConnell, was the kind of girl you figured would end up running off with some dude in a rock band. Eventually, she'd get knocked up and end life as an angry, single woman who smoked 2 packs a day on the porch of her double-wide. At this age, she was attractive, but time would catch up to her in her 30s and make Kim McConnell look 10 or 20 years older than she truly was. She blew a few strands of her fair-colored hair that had fallen across her face from the small breeze which snuck its way into the conversation. "You're not going to answer me?" Sam paused, contemplating if he should walk away or answer her. He had witnessed her staring at him during lunch in the cafeteria on many occasions, though she never approached him. Not until that day. At first, he pretended not to pay attention to her, but after catching her several times, he began to stare back. He expected her to turn away, embarrassed, but she didn't. She continued to stare, analyzing him, and soon, Sam began to feel something. Something about this attention made him begin to have a slight attraction to the thin blonde. Sam took his seat that day, alone at the table in the corner where he always sat by himself. He sensed a twinge in his gut when he didn't see her across the room like he had for the last month or so, and it appeared that no one else acknowledged that she wasn't there either, as though she was a cobweb in the corner, simply removed by a sweep of a broom. This angered him, causing his blood to heat like acid inside his veins. Everyone he went to school with could care less about the people who didn't matter. The kids who didn't make it up the rungs of the social pecking ladder. Sam was about to stand up and leave the caf, just before he saw a movement enter the door to his left. He turned and saw her. She was standing in the doorway, staring at him. After a few seconds, she motioned for him to walk with her. He paused, doubting he had indeed seen her ask for him. But she motioned again, and Sam pointed to his chest. "Me?" he mouthed silently. She smiled and nodded. He grabbed his backpack, walked over to the door, which was slowly shutting as Kim walked down the stairs that headed away from the door. The door led to an outside area that covered an expansive walkway, connecting the gym to the rest of the school. Typically, a few other kids were there with a hacky sack, but not today. Cool spring rain fell earlier. The hacky sack crew didn't go out there when it rained. Sam walked up to her. He was much taller than she. He looked down as she stared into his silver blue eyes. They reminded her of the way the ice from the pond behind her house looked when the thaw began earlier that spring. "Is it true you killed your parents?" Sam didn't answer. "You're not going to answer me?" "Do you think I did?" "I don't know," she smiled. "That's why I'm asking." Sam didn't respond. He waited for her to continue to ask or simply forget about it, but he realized that wouldn't happen. "I was only 4 when the fire happened. A lot of people believe different, but I hardly remember what the house even looked like that I lived in then." Kim frowned slightly. Her eyes, however, wanted him to continue. "I don't understand." "Why would you? Everyone in this school thinks I'm the dude who threw paint thinner on my mom and dad and lit them up to burn alive. Honestly, I was kind of pissed off at first, but then I began to realize it made people afraid to talk to me. And I like that. I enjoy being alone. So, I never denied the rumors. It's like a silver lining to my bullshit life. So, you didn't do it? No, of course I didn't. Do you think anyone would let someone like that go to school like a normal person? It was a house fire. An accident. They say it happens all the time. A candle caught my mom's art studio on fire. And once the flames hit the curtains, the room combusted instantly, followed by the entire top floor. That's where they were, asleep. My mom forgot she had candles burning, and my neighbor rescued me, but my mom and dad, they never had a chance. Wow. I'm sorry, that sucks. Sam chuckled. What? She asked. Well, not exactly the way I expected this to happen. She smiled, looking into his eyes again. Expected? What were you expecting? I don't know, but I didn't think you were going to ask me so soon if I murdered my parents. I thought you... Never mind. Sam's cheeks had begun turning red. I only asked because I needed to know. And why would you need to know? So that I could ask you what I truly want to know. And what is that? I wanted to see if you would kill my stepfather. But since you didn't actually kill your own parents, and you're not as crazy as people say you are, it's kind of pointless now. Whoa, wait. Did you just ask me to kill your stepfather? Like, just like that? Like, hey, can you do me a favor and kill someone for me? Kim pursed her lips. Yeah, that's what I asked. I figured if you murdered your own parents, then maybe you'd think about doing it again for someone else. I think you mean for you. She paused, then nodded her head. Yeah, for me. She paused for a response. She received nothing. Of course, I'm only kidding. Honestly, I never liked the guy. My mom is just too ignorant to realize he's a piece of shit. But I thought it would be nice to know that he could be, she made air quotes with her fingers, taken care of if I wanted him to go, she smirked. Sam's only response was a small, inquisitive smirk as he looked down at her. His eyes bored into hers. A warm sensation developed in her belly. She sensed something about this boy, this perfectly sane but intense boy towering in front of her. It was something about the way he looked at her, like he understood everything about her, every secret she ever had. The shrill sound of the bell rang throughout the high school campus. Loads of other kids poured through the doors, passing by them both without a second glance. Sam put his hand under her chin and moved close to her. For a moment, Kim thought he was going to lean in and kiss her. Instead, he moved towards her left ear and whispered, "You asked me if I killed my parents, but you never asked me if I had murdered someone else." Kim's legs began to feel weak under her. The air in her lungs disappeared in an instant as Sam moved back in front of her, staring into her eyes once again. She froze, not knowing what to say next. And before she realized it, Sam was walking away from her to his next class. She watched him as he walked away. He turned back just once to look at her. He smiled slyly and winked at her. Again, she sensed the warm reaction in her belly, but this time was different. It felt slimy, like a worm slithering inside her guts, not the butterflies she had earlier. Did I literally just say that, she thought. And what did he mean by, you never asked me if I had ever murdered someone else? The rest of the afternoon, she decided to cut classes and hop from one bathroom to the next, avoiding getting seen by anyone inside the school. She couldn't put her finger on what bothered her so much. Was it what she asked Sam? Or was it what Sam said? The anxiety was eating her up inside, and all she could think about was finishing up the rest of the afternoon and getting back home. After school, Kim went to work at her part-time job at a small Italian restaurant in the next town over, Sal's Italian Bistro. It was more like a hole in the wall to grab a decent slice of pizza than a restaurant. The owner, Sal, was her friend's father. She worked there from 3 p.m. to about 5:30, 6 p.m. Monday through Friday. She clocked out earlier depending on the number of people that came in on any given day. Sal Albricazzi noticed she appeared a bit distant and lost in her own thoughts that day. He hesitated but eventually asked Kim if everything was all right. Kim told him it was, but asked if he wouldn't mind if she made a phone call. Sal glanced around the small, empty restaurant and gave her a thin smile. Well, being that we're packed to the gills with absolutely nobody in the joint, go ahead, Kimmy. Take your time. We can handle it for a few. Kim walked into the back to make her phone call. Sal observed her as she did. It was unusual for her to seem so solemn. She was usually pretty cheerful, and being that Sal had known her since she was about 8 years old, he saw right away something wasn't right and gave her as much time as she needed to call whoever it was that she had to speak with. A few moments later, she walked back up front. She sat at one of the booths instead of behind the counter. She rested her cheek in her hand and began doodling on a napkin with her finger. You okay, kiddo? Kim continued to doodle her imaginary drawings on the napkin. My mom isn't answering her phone. I even called the house line and nobody answered. Oh, that doesn't mean anything, does it? Your mom could be out somewhere. I mean, it's only 3:30 or so. Maybe she had to run to the store or something. Her middle finger traced a circle on the napkin over and over. Yeah, I guess so. But normally she's home by now. Jeff doesn't like it when she isn't home when school gets out. Jeff was her stepfather. Sal knew him. Sal didn't like the man. He never told this to Kim, of course, but he didn't trust him and knew he was the polar opposite of who he pretended to be. Sugar on the outside, but piss and vinegar on the inside. How about this? Fold me up a couple dozen pizza boxes for later. Have one of the guys put them on the shelf for you, and once you're done, you can get out of here and go home. You sound good? As much as Kim hated folding up the pizza boxes, she was appreciative. Thanks, Mr. Abercuzzi. I appreciate that. You sure you don't mind? Don't you think about it twice. Here you go. He handed her a stack of flat pizza boxes that were still wrapped in their cellophane. Once she got a few boxes in, she was in her rhythm, and soon began to forget about how anxious she was only a little while ago. A half a dozen boxes in, the phone rang. She stopped folding the box and began walking to the counter, when Sal put his hand up, signaling her to continue with the boxes. Sal's, he answered proudly. Any time he answered the phone himself, Kim could see how excited he became. He was proud of the little place he'd built. He had a lot of regulars that either came in directly to the restaurant or called in for their pickup order. Kim? Yeah, she's here. Hold on a moment, will you? He put the phone across his chest and yelled over to Kim. Phone call for you, kiddo. I'll take it in the back if that's okay, Mr. Abercuzzi. He nodded to her. She ran to the back room again, hastily picking up the phone. Mom? It's me, the voice replied. Sam? Yeah. Who'd you think it would be? Kim swallowed hard. She began to wonder how he even knew she worked here. Hey, Sam, what's up? I'm kinda in the middle of work here. I know. That's why I called. I wanted to tell you something. Curious, she responded. Okay. You asked me something today. Do you remember what it was? Again, Kim swallowed hard, but this time her throat was too dry to get anything down. Sam, I'm not sure why I asked you about your parents, and I'm sorry. I don't know. I would just watch you every day at lunch, and you would just sit there all alone. Nobody came by to talk with you. Everyone's sort of what? Sam prodded. Well, everyone is kind of afraid of you, you know? I mean, the rumors and all. I know what you mean, Kim, but rumors or not, I've noticed everyone walk to the other side of the hallway when I'm walking down it. I'm not scary, Kim, but you could say... He paused, searching for the correct words. You could say I'm passionate. Passionate? Kim, you asked me something else today. Or should I say you requested something of me? Kim's stomach dropped. Her heart felt as though it was going to thrum right outside her chest. She felt the spines of dryness in the back of her throat, a feeling of sharp warmth begin to pulse at the bottom of her skull. Sam. It was at that moment that she could hear the distant sound of sirens blaring in the background. The fire whistle had been signaling it outside, but she had only begun to hear it as she listened to the sound of Sam laughing quietly on the other side of the line. She put the phone in front of her face and began screaming, Sam! What did you do, Sam? Sal dropped the pizza he was working on and ran to the back room. Kim's eyes were wide and bloodshot. Hot tears of sorrow and anger began to stream down them. Behind the tears, her face turned horribly pale as she continued to scream, Sam! Sam! Silence and white noise static echoed back. It was all she could hear on the other side of the receiver as the sirens wailed in the distance. Kim collapsed but clung to the phone on her ear. My God, Sam, please. Please, tell me you didn't. It was all she could say. Sal stood in the doorway, confusion lining his face. Panic began to creep inside his thoughts as he listened. Kim stared blankly into the room, her eyes focused on nothing but everything all at once. Please, God. Please. Don't let them all be dead, please. Please. Don't worry, Kim. It won't come back to me or to you. Nobody will ever know. I don't feel so empty now, Kim. I don't feel empty. And now your world has been burned to the ground, too. Just like mine. It'll be all okay. It'll all be okay. It's like they told me all those years ago. Accidents happen. Accidents happen all the time.